Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday message for April 19th of 2026. Today, we're going to be discussing Chapter 4 of Lessons in Truth by H. Emily Cady, and this chapter is called Denials. Now, a lot of times when we hear the word denial, many of us think of avoidance. We think of refusing to face reality. We think of refusing to look at something painful or difficult and pretend that it doesn't exist. So, in everyday language, denial is often seen as weakness. It's an inability to confront the truth of what we're living in. But in spiritual sense, presented in this chapter, denial is not weakness. It's actually power. So it's not the refusal to see truth, it's the refusal to accept error as truth. And this distinction changes everything. So let's begin by understanding what is meant by denial in the way that Emily Cady discusses it. To her, a spiritual denial is a conscious rejection of false beliefs, beliefs that limit, distort, and bind us. And it is actually the deliberate act of saying this appearance does not define reality. This thought does not have authority over me. This condition is not the final truth of my being. So denial is not about closing your eyes to life. It's about opening your eyes to a deeper level of truth. Because there's actually two levels at which we can live. The level of appearance, where circumstances seem to dictate reality, or the level of spiritual truth, where divine law defines what is ultimately real. And the purpose of denial is to help us shift from the first level to the second. So in this chapter, Cady teaches us that much of our suffering comes not from reality, but from our false beliefs about reality. We believe we're limited. We believe we're separate. We believe we're powerless. We believe that circumstances control us. And these beliefs, repeated over time, begin to feel like facts. But feeling like a fact does not make something true. If you've ever believed something about yourself that later proved false, maybe that you're not capable of doing something, not worthy, not strong, you already understand this principle because there have been times when you found that you were more than capable, more than worthy, and definitely very powerful. So the belief felt real. It shaped your behavior and it influenced your choices, but it was never the truth. So denial is the tool by which we begin to dismantle these false structures. So imagine living in a house with windows that have been painted over. You assume the world outside is dark because all you've seen is darkness. So now imagine someone comes along and begins to scrape away the paint. At first, it feels disruptive. It challenges your assumption. It may even feel uncomfortable. But as the paint is removed, light begins to enter. So denial is like that scraping process. It removes the layers of false belief that block the light of truth. When you deny limitation, you make room for possibility. When you deny fear, you make room for faith. When you deny lack, you make room for abundance. Denial is not the end of the process. It's actually the beginning because it clears the ground so that truth can take root. So let's be very practical. What are we being called to deny? Not reality, not what's happening around you, but the misinterpretations of reality. You deny the belief that you're powerless. You deny the idea that your past defines your future. You deny the thought that you are separate from good. You deny the conclusion that appearances are permanent. You deny the authority of fear. You deny the control of anger. You deny the grip that resentment has over you. You deny judgment as being the final word. So notice this, you're not denying that these experiences are occurring. You are denying their ultimate authority. You're saying, this may be present, but it is not sovereign. It does not define me. But denial requires courage because appearances can be very convincing. When circumstances are difficult, it is easy to accept them as permanent. When emotions are strong, it is easy to believe they are absolute. When challenges persist, it's easy to surrender to them. But denial calls you to stand in a higher awareness. It asks you to say, even in the face of contradiction, this is not the final truth. So this is not denial of reality. It's alignment with a deeper reality. So let's bring this into the inner world of thought and feeling. How often do we accept every thought that enters our mind as valid? A thought arises, I'm not good enough, and we accept it. Another thought arises, this will never work, and we believe it. Another thought says, they don't respect me, and we react to it. But what if we begin to question these thoughts? What if we practice denial at the level of the mind? I deny that I'm not good enough. I deny that failure is inevitable. I deny that my worth is determined by others' opinions. Now, this is not self-deception, it's self-liberation, because the mind, left untrained, will repeat patterns that do not serve you. And denial interrupts those patterns. Now, let's be clear about something important. Denial is not suppression. Suppression says, I feel anger, but I'm going to pretend I don't. Denial says, I feel anger, but I refuse to let it define my reality or dictate my actions. Suppression pushes emotions down. Denial lifts awareness up. So you could say that suppression avoids, denial transformed. So here you're not being asked to ignore your feelings. You're actually being asked to refuse to be ruled by them. So in chapter 4, it does not stand alone. It prepares the way for what comes next. Denial clears the ground and affirmations plant the seeds. First, you deny the false, then you affirm the truth. You deny fear, then you affirm courage. You deny lack, then you affirm abundance. You deny limitation, then affirm possibility. If you only affirm without denying, you may be trying to plant seeds in a soil that is still crowded with weeds. But when you deny first, you create space for truth to grow. So let's make this practical again. How do you live this teaching? First of all, you begin with awareness. When a limiting thought arises, you do not automatically accept it. You learn to pause. Then you ask yourself, is this absolutely true? Is this really aligned with the highest truth that I know? If the answer is no, then gently but firmly deny it. I do not accept this thought. This is not the truth of my being. This does not have power over me. Then replace it with a higher truth. And over time, this becomes a habit. And as it becomes a habit, your inner world begins to change. So as you practice denial, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to realize that you are not your thoughts. You're not your fears. You're not your past reactions. You're not the labels that you have accepted for yourself. You are the one who can observe, choose, and transform. And this is a shift in identity from being a passive recipient of thoughts to being an active participant in consciousness, from being controlled by patterns to being the one who reshapes them. And this is freedom, and this is the power that you have. So one of the most challenging applications of denial is in the face of external conditions. So when life presents a difficulty, financial strain, relationship conflict, uncertainty, it's natural to feel overwhelmed, but denial invites you to take a different stance, not to ignore the situation, but to deny that it has ultimate power. You could say to yourself, this situation is temporary. This does not define my future. This is a higher outcome unfolding. And this does not mean you take no action. It means your action is rooted in faith, not fear. And let's be honest, this is not a one-time act. You need to deny the same false belief over and over and over again, perhaps many, many times, because patterns that have been practiced for years do not disappear overnight. But every time you deny a false belief, you weaken it. Every time you refuse to accept limitation, you strengthen your alignment with truth. So think of it as training the mind. At first it resists, which it will, but with repetition, it begins to follow your lead. So denial is not loud. It doesn't draw attention and it doesn't seek approval. It's often a quiet internal act. So a thought arises and you gently say no. A fear comes up and you calmly refuse its authority. A limitation presents itself and you decline to accept it as final. Now, no one's going to see you do this work because it's all internal. But it is so powerful because it's shaping the very foundation of your life. Imagine what life would be like if you truly embrace this practice. Imagine no longer being at the mercy of every negative thought. Imagine no longer accepting fear as your guide. Imagine no longer believing every limiting story. Instead, you stand grounded in truth. You evaluate your thoughts rather than absorbing them. You choose responses rather than reacting automatically. You align with possibility rather than surrendering to appearance. Now, this is not perfection, it's progress. So today, you're invited into a new relationship with your own mind. A relationship where you are no longer passive, where you are no longer accepting everything as truth, where you are no longer bound by old patterns. Instead, you become discerning, intentional, awake. And when something arises that does not align with truth, you don't fear it. You deny it, but you deny it not harshly, not with anger, but firmly. This is not the truth of my being. This does not define me. This has no power over me. And then you, in turn, with equal intention, move toward what is true. Denial is not about rejecting life. It's about rejecting everything that diminishes life. It's about clearing away illusions so that truth can shine. It's about reclaiming authority over your own consciousness. And as you practice it moment by moment, day by day, you will find something extraordinary unfolding. Your thoughts will become clearer. Your emotions will become steadier. Your responses will become wiser. Your life will begin to reflect a deeper truth. So from this day forward, go with this simple but powerful practice. Deny the false. Stand in what's true. And just watch as your inner world and your outer experience begins to transform in your life. So I want to say thank you so much for joining us today, for listening to this message. And hopefully this message can take you forward into an entirely new way of looking at life, being in life, and experiencing life. And so I want to say thank you so much. God bless, and have an absolutely beautiful, beautiful week.